Yeah, well, Prof here, and I don't know what the heck just happened. I had started a video, and me big boy over here, King Arthur James, had showed up. How you doing? How you doing? Yeah? Need a pet? Yeah, you need a pet. You'd be a big purry boy right now. Oh, is that feeling good? Yeah? Yeah, more scratches? Okay. But I had started the video and said that we had some follow-up videos that need to get done. And this arm has gone a bit wonk-tastic. Been using the Basilisk V3 Pro 35K Phantom Green. Actually been quite liking it. You're like, oh, it's £1,000,000! Yeah, I've been using it as a gaming mouse. You can easily use this. It's plenty performant as a gaming mouse, but it's like 115 grams. And I have the charging puck in the bottom, so might be more than that. Apologies for the disheveled t-shirt and stuff. Been working all day. Re-adhesive the top onto one of the desks. One of my desks for the office. Just tons of crap going on. We got some Knipex here. Let's just see if there's anything pertinent before we go on to the actual topic of the video. Ooh, these are the little baby tie wraps. If you guys ever needed little baby tie wraps, I did a video about these. These are the 2mm ones, and I said that there was a even smaller one. Look at that. Because those other ones are pretty long, and generally you're not going to need, if you need a tie wrap this small, you do not need a very long one. So that's a 2mm tie wrap after the 18-pound ones, which are 2.5mm or a 1/16 of an inch. They stopped rating them via pounds. I don't know if this has any amount of strength to it, really. But those came in. I'm going to put those in one of my drawers of parts and stuff. It'll probably take me forever to go through these, because it's not often that I need these little tiny guys. Maybe you guys do. I can try and link them, and you can check down below. I may have remembered to include them on the previous video if I didn't have them. I may have waited until I saw if they were legit. What do we got in here? Paisley, what do we got in here? We're trying to get to the main topic of the video. I just don't know what box that's in. Do not charge battery. Oh, these are the BIOS batteries for the Intel NUC. So basically, I got a NUC that does let me boot up if I pull the battery and cycle the power on it. As soon as you plug that battery back in, nada. So thought I'd try a new battery for it. That's one of those old NUC 10s that died. I think I've found the issue with one of them. It's just you don't want something risky like that actually being used in a everyday life scenario. What do we got here? Ooh, I know what this is. This is my AVE, my latest knife, and we got some more magnets to hang stuff from, keys or flash drives or whatever you little 3D printed things for them. But this is the latest size with the belt clip. Now you're like, hey, we saw we as in you guys saw the video of me opening these. Haven't you put them together yet? The answer to that sadly has been, nah, haven't taken the time. Because the original requires some amount of butane torch action, which I do have one now. I might have back then, but it was a shitty one. I have a little bit better one now, a little bit more confident. But there's a little bit of finishing, especially on the original, that needs to be done. So, one of these days, or probably like a Friday one week, I'll decide hey, that's what I'm doing with my, instead of playing Call of Duty, that's what happened the past 2 Fridays, is especially with the game a little bit later into its season, and they're working on getting rid of the hackers. It's just they're always a present annoyance. Just haven't done stuff like that, and I really should, because AV makes a nice product, and I can't show you guys about it or tell you guys about it because I'm putting mine together. Now this is what should be the topic of the video. Oh, I gotta write this down because this just hit me because of the brand this is. Razer. That is the new Deathadder V4 Pro. Not Hyperspeed, Pro. Comes with their new hemispherical dongle or something like that. Because I knew this what we were going for, I did grab the, sadly they're not color coded. I'm gonna get some, I got a label printer now, so we're gonna get some label tape in the correct color, probably green or black on green for the Razer folks out there. Then I do have my Viper V3 Pro and my Razer, or my Deathadder V3 Hyperspeed, which is more of a Deathadder V3 Mini, whereas because the actual Deathadder V3 is more of a micro. I didn't get the it'd be 4K dongle, upgradable to 8K dongle for that guy. PZ, you are literally right in the way. Did you know that? You are 100% in the way. That's what this box is for, is my new switch from Tactile Turn. Got the stone-washed standard size. Running out of space for these, so normally you're like, you never keep the boxes. Yeah, well, off camera over here you can see that I am running out of pen storage quickly. Well, I've already been out. There's more coming, of course, as always. This guy's been the daily driver though, the full brass modal. What I was going to make a video about is I did get, I'm going to have to write this down or you guys are going to have to hold it to me. I did get this set up. This is the Control Pod that I was fighting with on camera to make work. I don't know if there'd be anything playing right now to make it play.
50, it was like 2650, 2660 actually is where it started, and then it dropped down to an average of...
So like once you wake it up, you have to press it once to wake it up, then it'll go off enough. But like I always give Razer Synapse props for being fairly well and intuitive. This is probably such a not used product because it's really sold to be used in conjunction with their speakers. That, my God, is it a pain in the ass to program. I will admit, though, this button on the side does do changing speaker output, like Windows speaker output. Is not, you can tie it to solely Razer devices, because you can pair this to their hardware, like their speaker hardware. But if you tie it to Windows, you can make that switch Windows output devices, which is super handy. But programming that thing was as bad as using Corsair IQ. Somebody just has not proofread it, used it, attempted to actually use the product that they sold you. I don't know how you want to keep saying that, but you know. Oh, and what's the last one we need? It's gonna be this old gal. I much prefer this finish, people. This sort of, the white one got this sort of rough finish. You can see this one got quite a lot of use for me because it's all discolored. I think that's what a lot of people didn't like about the rougher white finish, is it did pick up and look dirty quickly. Clean it or just don't, like I did. Personally, this one where they went to this more smooth white, it's sort of based on what the black of this would have been, especially the black wired version. Was not a fan. Squares had that. The white one went that route. The white here isn't that bad, I don't think, but grip wise, this is much better in my opinion. Is this rough textured, because this has a finish on it, right? This probably does. It probably has like a UV coat or something. I'm not sure, but it feels much more closer just to the natural plastic texture. And I prefer that. When it came to the Hyperspeed, and part of the reason why I think it's a little bit hard to hold on to is the only finish available is that sort of like this black finish that never looks good. You can see all my grease marks on it. That's just human schmoo. That on this sort of like semi-gloss, maybe satin black finish. It's like kind of soft, but not. Vexy does a much better job on that, on their painted finishes. So I still tend to not like the black and white ones, which is why I was kind of hoping on the XEV2 to go with. They now have like it's not graphite, it's they have a replacement for the black that's like a deep gray or dark gray or something. But the XEV2 got delayed because the bottoms were warping. And by that time, the lake green was available, and of the new colors, that's the one I would even prefer even more. But I would even prefer more than this style, and I know I'm probably on the, for me, this actually makes it a little bit hard to grip, is because it is kind of slick. I would rather have a glossy finish or a textured finish over this sort of in-between, where you can definitely tell it's coated, but I don't know, obviously not in a way that repels my human goobers. And I've used this one quite a lot. I like the shape of the Hyperspeed. It's just smaller than the Deathadder V3 Pro. Deathadder V3 Pro, my opinion, not really a Deathadder. It's a Mamba. Traditionally, the Deathadder was the wired high-performance variant, and the Mamba was the wireless one with more buttons, etc., yada yada. Well, they combined the two. This is wireless but high performance, and they call it the Deathadder because the Deathadder is far better known. I would also argue that this shape that it went to is much closer to what the Mamba would have been. This is not, the ergonomics of this are considerably different than an older Deathadder. I did not happen to grab one. Maybe I should have. The oldest would have been the Deathadder V2 Hyperspeed, would have been the last one that kind of had the more classic, that's still got the V2 revised shaped. and it had some extra buttons like a Mamba would. But if you want the last one, they still sell the Essential, and that's still the original, like Deathadder 2013. It's actually still the 2013 effectively. So I was not a huge fan of going to this mouse. I actually ran the Viper V3 Hyperspeed, and even ran that with a 4K dongle prior to the V3 Pro coming out. Now this I've never paired with a 4K dongle. I could very easily steal the one from this Deathadder if I wanted to. We'll see if I'll even bother though with this V4 Pro, since I got the V4 Pro in the box. I feel like between the Viper V3 Pro and this V3 Hyperspeed, the whatever coating you got even a bit more like rubberized, finish wise. I'm traditionally, like I said, because I have like acidic sweat. I'm sure some of you out there have run into this where like your sweat erodes. Like I'll soak a soft pad, which is why it's odd I'm using one now while I'm playing. It would also, back in the day, if you had the soft touch plastic, I would make soft touch plastic like melt away, which is why I generally went glossy. And people are like, oh, but glossy's slippery. Actually, once you get your schmoo on it and you kind of like work it in, and you like work a spot for your fingers and stuff, it actually grips up really well because it's so smooth that like your fingerprints and stuff actually are what are providing the grip, if that makes sense. However, when you get this like weird in between, in my personal opinion, I would rather have like no coating, or as close to no coating as you can get. At least then you can put grips on it easier. Now I shouldn't say I don't put grips on things. I have on the Rival 106s. I did on the tips here. Originally Vaxi I didn't have to, because prior to the XE they actually textured their main clicks, which I really liked. They went away with that though once they went to the colored painted finishes. I don't necessarily know why. I haven't tried, like I used to cut up lizard skins and put them on there and stuff like that. Haven't done that since. I've had some mice though that I've really considered where like if I notice my main click fingers are slipping, that's where I would put a little bit of grip there. But I never want it on the sides, because then you're gonna make a mouse fatter. I'm never gonna, like, if you're gonna put it on the sides, you gotta put it on the back. If you're gonna put it on the back, you're gonna have to put it on the clips, because then you're making the entire mouse bigger. Well, then just get a bigger mouse. At least that's my opinion. Because I also have the opinion that performance-wise, and some of you may say I'm dead wrong, but performance-wise, the mice have been good enough since the 3310, in my opinion. There were a lot of great kind of, I want to say like genre-defining 3310 mice, but like that's when like PC gaming was coming back. So there are a lot of mice from that era that are like very important, very good mice. They just felt just. That was back when, you know, getting a mouse around 100 grams, or if it was under 100, that was considered light. But they all felt. I mean, we were dealing with mostly wired mice. The wireless mice back then, not so hot. But from a performance perspective, I could probably give any of you a 3310 based mouse, and as long as you don't do like the weird tilt slam shit, which if you do, fix your playstyle. But you know, it's like an original G502, still amazing. You know, that's kind of a gen newer than that, but original Deathadder 2013, you're not losing because of Deathadder 2013. I mean, you might be losing because you are not accustomed to playing with a Deathadder 2013, especially if you have like a fingertip grip or something. But it ain't the mouse's fault. So 2.4 gigahertz, yeah, aren't they all? I'd be interested to see if any of these mice go to a wider, you know, like, there's so much at 2.4 gigahertz. All the Bluetooth stuff is. you know, who is that? Zoe tried that ultra wideband antenna. I swear I could hear that in my headphones. It's like RFI. Actually, why I kind of stopped using it. Their design, overly engineered, overly expensive as well. I think they've started. Not I think I've bought some of their new ones. They have started to pare it down, and the prices have actually gone down by them doing that. Like it's like you don't need two cables. Vaxi kind of did that as well. You don't need a cable good enough for playing with anymore because nobody plays. Not nobody, but so few people use wireless mice wired for more than just browsing the desktop that it's not worth. Like you'd rather have a thicker wire in the cable to charge faster and be able to do more amperage than you would for better wired play. ProSettings.net, Pro Gaming of the Year. It's always interesting to see that pros are actually using wireless mice now, because for the longest time that was like a no-no. Didn't matter how good the mouse was. 57 grams. That is darn light. Optical scroll wheel, never a fan of those. I think people, Squares at least said that people have been having those fail. Up to 120 hours battery life. Yeah, if you're running at like 0 hertz or something, 500 hertz, I'm sure. Usually, yeah, they got a star, maybe depending on usage conditions. Yep. So they're going to tell you, oh, it can do 8,000 hertz, but it also has up to 120 hours. That's at 500 hertz. So, or maybe it's at 1,000, right? So I'd take that as either 1/8 or 1/16 of that, right? Optical switches. They're going to use that for more precision, supposedly, though the makeup of the switch is still going to be the same as a mechanical switch. It does simplify their end, actually, on the making of it, because there's a light sensor in the bottom of the, like, built right into the PCB, basically. I don't know. Now that we've figured out the double click issues, or at least Kale figured out the double click issues, I don't know. I'm an old school guy. I prefer the mechanical click mice. To be truthful, I still use the wired Vaxi XE at work. In my current setup here, it would probably be fine to have a wired mouse. Now, when I had my big glass, or when I could have, I should say, my big glass SkyPad, that was a bit different. It actually, even with a bungee, like they don't make a bungee big enough to cover a SkyPad entirely. Like that's not a thing. Like you have to have so much slack on the bungee that like it wouldn't be suspending it above the surface. 45K optical sensor. That's more than the 35K on the Basilisk. Not that it matters, because I'm going to run 400 and 1600 DPI like I have for 2 decades. 2006, maybe not. Close to it though. 8,000 hertz wireless pulling dongle. So rather than their 4,000 that they upgraded, they're saying this is a true 8,000. If you watch my charging puck dock for the Basilisk in my previous Razer video, that is sold as an 8,000, though those originally shipped as 4,000. So, I don't know if that's why they say true, or do they say true because Corsair does the 2,000 hertz where they just send it twice. What do we get in here? Sentinels, blah, 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 blah. Like I said, I really shape, in my opinion, is king. I've always liked the Deathadder, though I do think the V4 has strayed, and then the hyperspeed kind of brought it back, which is good. Supposedly this is just basically a V3 with the coating of a Viper V3. To be truthful, for somebody who has found out that and I shouldn't say found out, I was always a huge fan of the IntelliMouse Optical. I was a huge fan. I like the Akari Laser as well, okay, over there. And then like the Kana, brilliant mouse, which is a variant of the IntelliMouse Optical. Always like the Wheel Mouse Optical as well. The Kinzu didn't have back and forward buttons. If it did, would have used it. But then always when I went to tournaments, I always just grabbed the Deathadder, and it was always, I don't know, despite not using that every day, I would crush with it, you know. So that's why at one point I was like, wait, if I do great performance with the Deathadder at LAN parties, because that was just like my go-to, because I didn't use it daily. I just basically always kept it in the LAN bag or in the backpack, etc. But if I'm doing so well with it, what if I try and use that as my main? Did that for a while. There's always been one as a backup, or at least a Razer mouse as the backup. So it's still a backup, but then I went EC2, a little smaller. That's what really got me into back into mice that aren't software. Like, I used to always be like, hey, if I can't program it, I don't want it. But then we started playing more games started letting you program multiple assignments in the game itself, and also assign stuff to the mouse, because it used to be that mice you couldn't remap in game, so you'd have to remap it on the mouse. So that got better and better over time. Also, you didn't need the sniper button or equivalent DPI button, because in games, when you scope in, it automatically changes your sensitivity in game, right? But because for those that don't know, the XE, I'm not going to grab my V2, but here's my original XE. Actually, no, it's the XE wireless. Sorry, the original XE did have to get replaced with another wired one that's at work. But this shape is my main. It's my main shape. I think it is a brilliant shape. When I heard on the wired version that they were going back to a mechanical scroll, and that this was a gaming / I don't want to say productivity mouse, but like sort of everyday use mouse, because that is how I play. I'm working 8 hours a day, and if I have time to game, awesome. So you gain familiarity with, and I shouldn't say working too, because I'm like on the computer doing video editing, photo editing, music editing. Yeah, I'm just using my computer, right? So you're gaining the familiarity and you're getting used to your mouse that way, and then you game. That's the way that I do it. I've always seen worse performance. For a long time, I used to run a gaming mouse, and then I used to use a completely different mouse for work. And I actually just found that having a lighter weight mouse that was consistent, that I was familiar with, was better. And I'm even kind of finding that with the Basilisk. It's quite heavy, as much as that Hyper Scroll is nice. These are so nimble. Even if you just go to the sub 100 gram, like they're designed to be productivity mice, and the Basilisk was just kind of like a productivity mouse with gaming features. They're designed in a different way than a gaming mouse is, and a lot of times I am doing a lot of like, I should probably learn more scripting and do more of this editing automated style, but often I just jump in and do it. And I just find that I loved using the Viper V2 Ultimate or Pro, the white one, the original white one, same texture as this, as a work mouse. The only downside there was it had like 3 days of battery life, and that's something that Vaxi would always do better for me. But now, instead of running a Deathadder on my desk, I run the Viper V3 Pro, or I would, prior to that, I was running the Hyperspeed, because it's effectively the right half of the Deathadder mirrored. So chop this in half, take this side, mirror it, and so it's an ambi-ergo mouse. That seems, or at least what I'm calling them. I don't know what you guys would call them. There are plenty of ambidextrous mice that are not ergonomic, if you ask me. So I think like something like the Viper V3 Pro would be ambi-ergo. So would a Vaxi XE. I wouldn't consider like the original Pro mouse or the not the wireless one, the wired Pro mouse. I know it gets confusing for some of you, or the 203, 305, 102, that shape. It's an ambi shape, but I wouldn't consider it ergo. There are a lot of mice like the Orochi, for example. That's a laptop mouse. But yeah, so we'll see where this one sits. There's always a Razer mouse on my desk because I have to run the software with the now Tartus Pro, previous Orbeaver, previous other things. Always, like I said, they've had the best software. That knob, I really need to make a video on that knob though. Holy shit, is that heinous and annoying. Never have had that problem with any of the mice I've had from Razer in the software. I think that's just because it's that item is very not utilized. It's actually great if you guys need a volume knob, like a wireless one, say you do digital volume, or you can even do mic volume with it. I feel like that could be useful. Especially if you use a Razer headset, or I mean, like obviously it's meant to pair with their speakers, but you know, like Razer sound stuff. But in general, it works great. I think it's rather expensive for what it is. But there's actually even more features you can do with it than they advertise. Getting it to do it though, you're battling the software. So we just got grips, the V4 Pro, Hyperspeed Wireless Gen 2 dongle, USB A to C cable. Let's take a peek here. Wow, white on white. I wonder if they did they do black inside the packaging for the black one? Those of you that got that version, comment down below. I know we've taken a half hour to get to this point, but you're getting some backstory. That's always what you get from me. Why are we here? And oh my gosh, from the Outlook, if I just remove this dongle, which if you ask me is not very dongle shaped. They do have DA V4 Pro, which is something that I need to actually put on my Vaxi dongles. I did. Tell me how easy that is to read. I did it with black permanent marker on black. Yeah, it's also on the bottom. I often see these from this side, so I really need to put it just right on the front there. Or on the top here. Maybe I can use my label maker too. But because writing that small for like, you know, E1 at FG, kind of hard to do. I feel like that square shape is much better. I actually preferred their old shape. Here you go, because you can turn this into a dongle at least. You put a C to C adapter in there, like this guy, right? Bada bing, bada boom, we're a dongle. This is getting big enough, and I bet you that's recessed enough that I can't turn this into. That's cutting it close. I don't even want to snap that in. I might not be able to get it out without pliers. It's recessed in there. This thing's also got some heft to it. Hopefully they added more weight to it than they did the that volume knob, because the fact that I have two of these is somewhat amazing, because they used to go out of stock and be sold for double on eBay. Because the only place you could get them was directly from Razer on the Razer store. Until I started including them. But yeah, check that out. If that's not the same mouse. So they're back to their Deathadder for like better part of 10 years, if not more. Was it the same? Yeah, it's the same finish as the Viper V3 Pro. Doesn't have that grippy that this has to it. I did get the white one. I generally prefer the white mice back when they were glossy. That's why I preferred them. It used to be white was glossy. Yeah, this does not have that same sort of soft touch feel that the Hyperspeed does. This has like a rubberized coating to it. Not a fan, not a huge fan of the Viper V3 Pro's coating. Even less of a fan though of this coating. Okay. It's not as smooth though as you might even be able to tell that this does have somewhat of a rubberized coating on it, whereas this is closer to just bare plastic. It's not. You can feel there's something on it, but comparing, Viper V3 Pro feels lighter. I don't think it is, but the way I grip it, they're both stupid light mice. This shape just fits me better too. And if you're wondering why, part of this, it's such an extreme hump right there on this version of this mouse. And it's like right under, if that was, and you can see right there is literally where this slopes off this way and it's a bit lower. And that's right where this mouse, both the V3 and the V4, kind of bump up even. See, it's like the highest point is here. And I don't know. I much prefer having my hand roll a little bit flatter. That's just me. But that was a big change. If I had the older Deathhadders, I could illustrate that their ergonomics from the V2 to the V3 changes drastically. The ergonomics from any, like the Chroma, the Elite to the V2, very, very slight. The V2 just had some improvements. They rounded off some edges. They changed some extreme slopes into a little bit less extreme slopes. They improved some just general life stuff. Okay, so they did what Vaxi did on the their mice as well. So the button's touching, right? Button's not touching. I do like that improvement. I mentioned that with one of the other Vaxi mice. There you go, E1. Yeah, so that's a nice change, but that's just like a change that has been seen in the industry of sorts, if that makes sense. Like the buttons are effectively the same size. They might be beveled a little bit more, I think, too. Maybe a little bit more clicky on the V3. I can grip. Watch this. I can grip that mouse. I mean, I know a lot of you out there though think I'm crazy for saying that this is the better finish, but even back when it was new, I thought that. That's why I got the white variant, not the black one. And maybe it's because it's worn in a bit, but the a bit smoother finish of the Viper V2 or V3 Pro, like, see, I can also grip that one. This one's like, we're not getting into the territory of this where we're starting to actually get like rubberized, like I actually feel drag on my fingerprints here. So what ends up happening for this, for me, when my hand gets sweaty, this gets like a bar of soap. I do like that on the Hyperspeed, because on the Viper you had to crack it open to do this. I do like that you can get your dongle accessible from the outside. However, this is no longer a AA or AAA mouse. It is rechargeable battery only, and you could see that coming on the Viper V3 Hyperspeed that came out before the Pro, which is odd. Normally the Pro comes out first, or the normal, then the Pro. You know, like normally go normal, Pro, Hyperspeed. And and often the hyperspeed is even a gen behind. But it's always been, only 1,000 hertz with Bluetooth, no Bluetooth. AA, AAA battery, which is great as a work mouse. No AA, AAA battery. And you could already tell that with the Viper V3 hyperspeed when you had to take the whole top of the shell off to get to it from this way. And the storage for the dongle was definitely like, oh shit, we need to have a place to put it. Let's put it in the most inaccessible place possible, because you got to take the whole thing apart, get the battery out, get the thing out, plug it. Like, basically they knew people weren't ever going to use it in that way. What ends up happening with this shape and this, when I go to pick it up, basically because this side's so high, it forces this side to slip. I don't know if you can see that, but like basically that happens because this, with this side being so high and this side being comparatively quite low, and now we've lost all of our, and maybe it'll work in some. But yeah, you can tell that this is just plastic on the bottom, and then this has some sort of rubberized coating on it. Not nearly as bad as, or I shouldn't say as bad, as heavy, as thick as, this also normal plastic and then textured. I know a lot of you are like, oh, this is way better, this finish. Just not to my style. With my, I'm somebody who has, you can see my hands are peeling. Somehow has the thing where they sweat a bunch, but they're dry and peeling. I don't know what that is, man. You tell me. Here's another comparison I can show you. See, this is like a bump style. Like it's convex. And how the Viper is flat. I prefer flat. Flat. Even if we go to here, flat. If we go to MP01S, not flat. It's stuff like that you start getting to be when you have this many mice, or you have this much selection, that you can start being picky about, is that I prefer having a flat scroll. There's more coverage of the meat of my finger on it. So if you scroll a bunch, or use that for selection of weapons, or I use like middle click for reload. Have for, I don't know, probably about as long as I've been using Razer mice. So there's not a ton here, guys and gals. This is from the renders that were leaked before it came out. I thought there was going to be more difference between this and this. If you have and like the V3, keep it, run it till it dies. I see, unless you're like me and you've picked up effectively every Deathadder at this point, minus some like branding ones, branding deals or whatever you want to call it. Then that's on you if you wanna snatch it. But they effectively did what they used to do back in the day when the new Deathadder comes out, and hey, we made the chroma into the elite, and we actually made it worse by putting in you get 50 million main clicks, which makes it better, but then we put cheap ass side buttons in the damn thing. Whereas back in the day, the Deathadder used to be known for being one of the few mice that had full click, full size switches in every switch, right? That is why the side buttons on that felt so amazing up through the chroma. And I think even with the chroma, they might have been full size, but they went to like 1 million click ones to make sure, because they're like, oh, we had to take that money and put them in main clicks. No, you didn't. in my opinion, it made it worse. Because I often use the side clicks as much as I use, maybe not as much as I use the main clicks. That is one thing you do get out of the optical main clicks is this like pew 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 pew. You don't get out of this is my one that's been through, this is on its 3rd feet, I think. Really could use some new ones, but it's now just a backup. Once I have my 2 desk situation, I'll probably main desk get the V1 or the V2, like the new guy, the Lake Green you saw, and my second one for work will get this guy because at work I run the orange wired version of this, so you can kind of. And then my second setup also has my second gaming PC, Chibi PC, that I use for LANs and stuff. So, you know, not a bad place to put that. Maybe once that happens, we'll get her some new feet because these are looking, you know, they've seen better days, right? Yeah. Mouse foot situation, better on the Pro V4. Pro V4 looks very similar to Viper V3 Pro. Less foot, but similar. I would have gone more foot, more better in my opinion. So this is, I'm guessing those are the same feet as the V3 Hyperspeed. If you look at that to me, not the middle one, but otherwise, those look to be the same feet, if you ask me. Same sensor probably as the V3 Pro or similar version as the Viper V3 Pro. They seem to update the Deathadder and the Viper at alternating cadences. So the V2 Pro Viper is what was with the V3 Pro Deathadder. Now it's the V3 Pro Viper that came out before the V4 Pro Deathadder. There's a lot in common there. And this has been out for a hot minute. And realistically, this is just like a nicer variant of the Hyperspeed. But if you're going to buy a Viper V3 Hyperspeed and get the 4K dongle, you might as well just bought this, unless you really prefer using batteries. But if you're going to be using the 4K dongle, you don't want to be using non-lithium rechargeable batteries. I can tell you that. I would like to point out to Logitech and Corsair, you see power/DPI. Yeah. They made their singular button on their mouse do DPI. It does this amazing thing. When you hold it down for a long time, it does power. But then when you click it, it does DPI. Now, in some cases, you have to click it to tell it that you're changing DPI and then click it again to actually cycle through. It depends on what mouse you're on. But oh, look at that. They did that with the V3 Pro as well. Wow. It's what? No way they did it on the V3 Hyperspeed. I bet you they do it even more if you go back even further. Yeah, I appreciate DPI change because though I want to use 400 in game still, because that's what I'm used to, and that's the closest. Like if I'm starting out a game without changing any in-game settings, 400 gets me the closest sensitivity with the default settings in game generally to what I want to play. That's just how it is. I used to play at 1600, and it took me, like, I basically stopped playing CSGO for, I don't know, 2 years at one point, and then I could finally go back down to 400, because I used to game at 1600. The issue with gaming at that high of a DPI is you're having to change your in-game sense to be so low that depending on how the like what you're talking about, like the scope insensitivity that automatically lowers it, right? Messing with that, sometimes that is done as a percentage of your main in-game sensitivity, right? Like say half or whatever, or 0.25, right? And sometimes that is just its own sensitivity. Well, if you're already having to lower because you're running such a high mouse sensitivity, right? That You have to lower the normal sensitivity so low. You may not actually be able to get that much lower of a... I think some games might even let you go negative. Like, it gets funky when you try doing the scoped in, the zoomed in sensitivities. Now, some of you are going to be like, hey, but like, if you have 8K, like, the only way to truly do it is to run this at max 45K DPI, and, you know, you got to be moving stupid fast to be able to use it, and blah, 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 blah. Probably, to be truthful. Like, at this point, I mean, we've known ever since Logitech got their tech up to 1000 hertz. Not their earlier stuff that was in, like, the G700, but after that, you know, there was the 602 that had the 500 hertz, and I'm forgetting the first one that had the 1000, but I'm sure it was like the G400 or the or not G400. That would have been G400 is basically an X518. G402 is what I was thinking of, or something like that. But yeah, so you can like really dig into that stuff if you want. I'm going to tell you, most pros probably don't fuck around with it. There's a reason why on the Vaxi mice, they still do 400, 800, 1600, 3200, and that's it. Now, if you update the firmware on here, or you get one of the newer ones out of the gate, they do have web configurable, which has stopped some of my close friends because they run either 1200 or some of them run 1400. Some of them run 1800. And you're like, why would you run 1800? Well, if you were a Deathadder user, like say you want to go and get the E1, which is you know, Vaxi's version of the EC2, and say you went from a Deathadder to an EC2, that would have been kind of similar. Now the EC2 wouldn't have had you know, or maybe you're a diehard Razer user and you're not anymore, and you're looking for like more of a niche brand. You might want to be able to set 1800 because that used to be the go-to DPI for every Deathadder out of the box until I think this gen, the V3. Might be wrong there, but it took them many, even though most people just go in and set it to 1600, out of the box, default DPI, and there was only one DPI it was at, was 1800. So some people want a Vaxi, like an E1, and they want to play at 1800 DPI. You couldn't do that before because they didn't have the web UI. You just had the buttons on the bottom of the mouse. Well, now you can do that. Or if you're one of those, you know, like I said, I got some friends out there that want to play 1200 or 1400 because that's what they're used to. Vaxi has now made that available, but like they are very, I mean, I'm guessing there are some that are more focused on the esports scene, but they are very focused, especially on the like Japan, Taiwan, Thailand, Malaysia. Some of that got, they don't have distribution anymore. But like, especially Japan, Taiwan scene, they're very focusing on esports, and maybe there are some guys out there in top tiers. Let me know if there are that run like, you know, like they'll run 35K DPI and then step it down super fire. I'm not going to say it's impossible, but I highly doubt it. I mean, there are pro trackball players too, you know. There are still people that play professionally with mouse and keyboard in what is that game? I can't. It's this, like the successor to Titanfall that I can't remember. Where like you're dumb to, like, you can't be top. You can't be the top team without using a controller because of the auto aim, which is insane. But yeah, so if you like this one, you'll like this one. It is lighter. Like this thing feels. If you guys go out and you're like, no, 54 grams or something, stupid. Wait, what is it on the back of the box? It might be on the back of the box. Hold on here. 57 grams. And what is an XEV2? This feels lighter, but I don't know if it necessarily is. XEV2. competitive mode. Weight 59 grams. Called it. So yeah, the fact that this was, what was it, 69.70, I think, might even been in the mid 70s. I find that insane. Let's see what this says. 76, yeah. That's right, mid-70s. The fact that they went from mid-70s with the original XE to, was it 59 grams, which is actually lighter than the XES, the XE Small, which was like 62, right? This thing feels super lightweight compared to this. This does not feel heavy. If you go and grab here, my Basilisk Pro, because this effectively competes with a G502. This is like 115 grams. You grab this feels stupid light by comparison. Like, that's the sort of thing. So you're going from a Basilisk, you know, down a step, and then from an XE V1 to a V2, and this is still lighter. Now, more than likely, if it goes off anything in the past with how Razer does stuff, they did that at the, I don't want to say exception, but at the loss of battery life. Especially, like, I remember the Viper V2 Pro being horrendous with battery life. I can't say for sure. They say 120 hours. If that's at 500 hertz, maybe it's at some of them. I've seen a lot of the 4K ones say at 1,000 hertz. Maybe we'll assume it's at 1,000 hertz. That's still 8 times less. So that's what? Half of that is 60. I should know this math. My brain's starting to fry. My brain can't do the math at the moment. Either way, it's a fraction. Well, we can divide by 10. Divide by 10 would be 12 hours. So let's say 20 hours of battery life. If it is, like, if they test it at 1,000 hertz, battery life wise, and it does 120 hours, this could do 20 hours at 8,000, depending. Yeah. I've been switching mice a lot more recently, but with this guy, with the original XE, they had I don't want to say they said like a 72 hour, but I think it was like a 3-day minimum that they wanted on Vaxie's mice. And they're like, yeah, we could easily make this lighter by just giving it a smaller battery. Most brands do that, but we want it to have a usable battery life length. You know, and I can appreciate that. My current one I have not used as a sole mouse as much, just because this exists. I actually tend to use my trackball, my Ploopy, when working lately. So I haven't had a great test out of it, but usually this guy, even when using for work and home, would last me, because I generally gamed on Friday nights, watching the LAN show. This would last me a week, or just under, I would say. Often I'd be charging it every 6 days, I want to say. And that's running at a 4K all the time. I used to, back when you can dual dongle, and they said that's never coming back, it used to run at 500 for my office time, and then at 1,000 for my work time. That did significantly increase its battery life. But you know, so we'll have to see. I'll probably be running this. I don't know if you saw it, even when I picked it up. It's slick, because like I said, my hands are dry, except once I start gaming, then they get to be yeah, you can say dry and cracking, right? Except once I start sweating, it's nice acidic sweat. The best for And this you can see how it just slips out of my hand, or especially with this tall part here, I'm pushing this and it's gonna slip out of my hand. You know, do a barrel roll like that. See, look at that. You do mouse tricks. I guess the one thing that I would prefer to see with these is they keep putting this button over here. I have to use a second hand. I can't really get that with my, even if I like claw it like that. That's why I've actually put the power switch right there, so you can hit it with your thumb. Some of the newer mice do that as well, though. Like on this guy, power's over there, DPI is right there. Yeah, they make. I would prefer to have DPI readily accessible, because basically what I'm desktoping now. I want to go game. Click. All right, let's go game. It's not that hard, but I can at least bounce and hit this. Hitting over there. Now with this mouse, I've gotten used to it because that is how the XCV2s. They put both of them on that left side. There must be a reason why. Maybe Razer knows as well. But getting over there, you got to kind of. With this one being so slick, it's really easy to do. Hit it over there. The other time I used, why do I run 400, 1600, and 400, 400, 1600? And I basically do a toggle. I shouldn't say I always believed, but like SteelSeries back in their, you know, like Akari Laser, Akari Optical, Xi era, where they literally had DPI high and low on the side. I completely agree. Once you know what the DPIs you want to use are, there is zero reason to need more than 2, in my opinion. So that's why I basically use toggle. And even on the desktop, I will often use 400. You're like, why would you use 400 on a desktop? Well, imagine you're in Photoshop and you're using your mouse to draw something, or you need to very precisely click and select something. Same reason you would want to lower DPI in game, you'll want to lower DPI on the desktop. So often, if I need to do something a bit more precision-oriented on the desktop, I just click it, put it into 400, you know, a little bit slower movement, do whatever I need to do, click it, put it back up. If you guys think that should be changed, let me know. Like, I'm willing to try out, like, a bajillion DPI. I think right now I'm playing, if I recall, Call of Duty is a standard as an 8 for in-game sense. I play 400 DPI with a 10, so I did bump it up slightly. But I did not change the scope to in sense, if that makes any sense. Hey. I'm kind of annoyed with this. I can no longer convert it to a dongle. The other one was basically made the way it was, though. Where did I put the here? So you guys saw the 4K dongle, right? I think those are all firmware updatable to 8K. The reason why it's like that, or shaped like that, is because the adapter for the standard 1K dongle looked like this. USB-C in its butt, USB in its face. So that is why the, exactly why the 4K dongle was the same shape. USB-C in its butt, nothing in its face, because it is the dongle. Yeah, at least that I can convert. You know, your standard Razer dongle looks something like this guy. If you would have seen the recent Basilisk video, you saw in that one, they made this translucent. That's crazy. I don't know of any other brand that would have done that. Yeah, I might have to steal. I don't want to buy another dongle. I might steal the Deathadder V3 dongle to put with the Deathadder Hyperspeed. I don't have much to say. These are some loud ass clicks. I know some people are. I think Bad C Tech was like, they're the worst sounding clicks. They're loud as frick. And I know some people have been wanting like silent mice lately that don't click. Deathadder V4 Pro is not for you then. Back buttons feel the same. A little bit more pingy on this one. Front button feels a bit worse. I don't know if that's because it's just that hair smaller, but like this is quite a bit of weight difference. I'll admit that. Yeah, this is a 30K. The Basilisk had a 35K. On the what do you freaking call that again? Phantom Green, I think. This is a 45K sensor. DPIs are meaningless and have been for, I don't know, since the 3310, basically. Actually, probably not since then. It was since the sensor in the, like, one slight gen newer, which is the one in the G502. Even then, a bit after that, like, realistically, if you go back to the Rival 600, which I liked, good mouse, they basically lowered its maximum DPI to get a better range of usable DPIs that weren't starting to double and stuff. So that went up to 2400. Most mice only went up to 1600 without needing to do some sort of doubling or interpolation and that sort of stuff. That's another good reason why to stop at 1600, unless you know your mouse. Now, a lot of modern mice are like, oh, we have native DPI at every step. You'd have to see the actual math on that, is what I'd say there. This guy is heckin' stiff. Like, it's holding its shape. I can almost guarantee 3 amp, yes. So they're going the route that Vaxi is as well. Probably a lot of brands are, where they're making these because they know you're not playing corded. Or at least they know you're not choosing to play corded, which means they don't need to include a good cable for corded play. So they'd rather give you, and this is just something I noticed on the newer Razer stuff, is that it says 5 volt 3 amp on it, and then on the dock, my dock said 5 volt 1 amp. Now the dock itself said 1.5 amp, so maybe 1 amp is short for 1.5 for them. Now what does 3 amp mean? Well, 5 volt 3 amp is USB PD, so that means that this should support USB PD. Despite being supposedly it's only 5 volt 200 milliamp when running. Yep, same thing for the Deathadder V3 Pro. Probably because they don't have RGB lights galore. Yep, 200 milliamp on the V3 Viper V3 Pro and 200 milliamp. So that's pretty much what Razer seems to have gotten it down to for, there you go, XEY 400 milliamp. So, theoretically, maybe they can do a bit more R&D than Vaxi can, and get that power draw number down a bit lower. Yep, the XEV2 is also at 400. Both of these don't have any DPI. What I can tell you, though, is the Basilisk here, with its array of RGB, is 500 milliamp. Like we used to see the Corsair keyboards go over that. That's why they started shipping either with 2 USBs, and they went away with that once USB 3 was standard. Because a single USB 3 port does 1.5 amp, which is also why the dock is rated that. So if you get the dock part, like say if you get the 8K dock for one of the ones that take the puck, which would not be this guy, Basilisk, Naga, Cobra, I think. Make sure you plug that into USB 3 port, just for power. Really doesn't matter otherwise, but not all USB 2 ports can go over that 500 milliamp. You might have a yellow one, sometimes I shouldn't say red, because red's sometimes USB 3. But sometimes motherboards do have like a charging port or a power port that does up to 2.1. You could probably use that. Otherwise, USB 3 has to do 1.5 amps. This, however, will do 3 amp. So plug that into a wall charger, especially a PD wall charger, and you'll be pumping. Throw it on the ground, yeah, and be pumping the juice into this thing. But that is just something I noticed. I have not looked to see how far back that goes. I only just noticed it on my Basilisk. So maybe you guys will be like, yeah, Razer's been doing that ever since they came out with, the white mice. The Viper V2 Pro has that. I'd find that interesting. It is marked on both ends, by the way, as well. So I showed you the USB-C. This guy also says 3 amp, 5 volt. What's interesting though, especially so what they're basically saying is that this cable can handle it. It, like I said, it's a much stiffer cable than if you wanted to play via wired. Not sure if this even can still do that. Probably, but most A ports are going to cap out at 2.1 amps. So it's interesting that they still provide you an A to C that's rated at 3 amps. That does tell me that this should be able to use USB PD, which, you know, C to C USB PD, and, you know, pull the full 3 amps. I might be wrong. The little dongle here is only 100 milliamp. 100. Hard to see there. But, do I gotta carry a really short cable on my desk now for this stupid dumb thing? It's got some... If you threw this at somebody, I bet you this... They're in competition with each other. Like, oh... I'm guessing they're doing this also so that, kind of like Zoe, where you want to get this, realistically, you want to get the receivers for your mice as close to the edge of your mouse pad as you can. Not stuff it behind your PC. So this kind of forces you to do that. Or even like a lot of people take the little dongle like from this guy and just put it in the front USBs on the top of your PC. You really don't want to be doing that, especially on the front ports, especially if you have USB 3 storage devices plugged in there. Oh my god, the RFI on that, this is going to be cutting in and out, guaranteed. I've made other videos about that. USB 3 data transfer causes a shit ton of RFI, and will literally knock out 2.4 gigahertz that's near it. Bluetooth, you know, Logitech unifying receiver, and I'm sure this guy. Now these have that's the other benefit of using these higher reporting rates like 4K. Vaxi doesn't have 8K yet. It's in development. Supposedly will work on their 4K receiver. But a benefit of using that higher hertz is you can use more of that as error correction. So it might not be faster, but say when it doesn't have to report the true 4,000, it can report the 1,000 4 times. And you're like, but Razer said it's true and that's faking it. Well, if you don't have new data to send, you might as well send the same data and use that as, you know, error correction effectively. Vaxi does a great job of explaining. I think some other brands do too, but they tend to break down why they do things, and I do appreciate that in a brand. This is an improved mouse. If you use the V3 and you love it and you're like, I want more, but or you want to put that one on a secondary computer and pick up a new one, or maybe that one's looking a bit ragged, you know, because say you're like me and you've been using this mouse since it's been out, you know, kind of like I've been doing this. Technically I had a white one I broke before it that I went to Squares, so it hasn't been the entire time that the XE wireless has been out, but almost. Basically we're getting on the edge of the warranty, sort of 2-year warranty started time period. I've been using this as my main one pretty straight. So this one might be looking pretty ragged. Maybe it's not dead or worn out, but it's just seeing, you know, you want to fresh up it. You know, this is that mouse with some improvements. And when I mean some improvements, I don't even mean like there's some internal stuff on the click, so you can see a group of 3 and then 1 support, rather than on the old one there's just 1, 2, 3. You can see that, whereas here there's like 1, 2, 3, 4, and that one on the outer is wider. I don't know if that leads to better stability. Yeah, might lead to better stability of the click. It is lighter, but this is already a stinking light. This mouse also feels built well. That is something that Razer was doing at this time with the V2 Viper and the V3 Deathadder that other brands weren't doing. They were making light mice, but they didn't make a mouse that you could do this with and squeeze. It would, or you'd squish it in. This is much the same. It feels like a solid solid mouse. It is slick in my hand, though. If you have dry hands, you might not like the transition from this finish to the, or like, I have dry, wet hands. We've been over this. Dry normally, like just been normally, but then they get soaking wet when actually gaming. Now, this is a well-worn in one. I'll have to game with it and find out. Though I'm quite happy with the Viper V3 Pro personally. This would be my backup to the XE, as as I drop another mouse, I found I'm more of an ambi, and I might have been an ambi gamer for the longest time. You know, like when everybody had hots for the Intel mouse Explorer, I was still, hey, don't take away my Intel mouse optical sort of guy. Also liked, there was a really nice old, like, generic, Logitech would use it for their OEM shapes for, like, Gateway and stuff. They had a good shape for that. Used to love it. So, just realized also that they'd already, on the Viper V3 Pro, already separated the buttons. So they were already learning. You know, the Hyperspeed has it as well. I don't think to the same extent. Yeah, they're more separated here. I like I said, I actually, that is something, as I was, because I basically use every vaccine mouse as it comes out. That is something I found I really appreciated, having better definition between the front and back. If you're like me and have a real fat thumb, the Deathadder is also good, because you're not gonna hit these. Whereas even on the Vaxi XE, I had to learn to not roll my thumb up a little bit when playing. You know, I have to grip more with like the front third, not the tip. Some mice I have to do that with, but more the front third of it, rather than the meaty back part, which is what I'd prefer. But I shift the weight forward a little bit, and then I don't click the side buttons. It took a couple weeks, I would say, to not do that. But with a Deathadder, I got room, you know. And you got much bigger side buttons. I like myself some big side buttons and a lot of room for my thumb. This guy gets calloused and thick compared to this one. I don't know if you can see like the difference there. I think it's especially on this edge from writing, and I mean, there's a reason why some of my fingerprints are like worn smooth in some places. I'm right-handed. I do a lot more with the right hand. It's kind of jacked up right here in the moment, and right here on, you know, you can see that. That's yeah. Most of the pain, despite this being where it's swollen, this is where the pain is. I don't know how hands work, but like doing this pulls some shit and doesn't feel amazing at the moment. If you've seen some of our other recent videos, yeah, it was much worse about a week ago. No idea. I woke up with that on last Monday. Or Tuesday? Last Tuesday? Yeah. I can click really damn well with it. It's still okay, despite the clicks being shit sounding. The like the I don't say ergonomics, like the mechanical structure inside seems to be better. So I can definitely spam clip more better. Like I get some hang-ups in this one. And if you're wondering why that's a good test for me, is I tend to play in Call of Duty and other shooters. I like semi-auto guns rather than like, I might play burst fire, but ones that require not just like holding this down and going brr, 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 like, but I'll gladly, if I can just spam like to the point where you're capping out, like when I'm clicking, I'm capping out the RPM for the weapon, like the rounds per minute. And where I have to actually usually slow myself down because I'm shooting faster, like your recoil can't reset fast enough. Now sometimes you can counter that enough, or you just slow it down just a little hair, because you don't want to generally shoot as fast as the weapon will go. You want just a less, depending on your setup. You can hear this XE is still way more silent. Like, this is a loud freaking click. If you want people to know you're clicking, get a Razer. Yeah, this thing's silent comparatively. I think the Basilisk was pretty loud too. Let's turn it off. Here. Nowhere near as bad. Right click's pretty bad. Yeah, how can right click sound so much different than left click? Right click. Oh, the shape is way freaking different. Look at that. Translucent side grips. I remember when the Deathadder had rubber side grips. Those were the days. Never had a problem gripping then. And you're like, oh, but you could put some on there. Yeah, and then I mess up the ergonomics. For a mouse that I don't already love the ergonomics for in here, I have to imagine are the... he finally does say co-founder and CEO. That happened in recent year or two, since and they even had in their look back at the boom slang coming back, I believe it was, and the history of the Deathadder. They finally mentioned Razer guy for the first time in however long. The guy died I want to say 3 years ago, so maybe he feels fine mentioning him now that he doesn't exist. But for the longest time, Min Lane 10 did not, I don't want to say would not, but at least did not mention, he would always say founder and CEO. When he, he might have been CEO. That's a current tier. But he definitely co-founded Razer as a company. So it's good to see that that's happening. He's a bit more forthcoming, I guess. I always do have some, Razer tries to be the Apple of the gaming peripheral world. I don't understand why there's Razer stores out there, dedicated Razer stores. There's a reason why Sony doesn't have Sony stores anymore. There's a reason why Microsoft doesn't have Microsoft stores anymore. I cannot fathom why Razer stores would exist. I mean, yes, they now sell every part of your setup, but there is no way that is making the money back, in my opinion. Maybe I'm wrong. If you think I'm wrong, throw it down below. Explain to me how Razer stores work as a branding opportunity and I'm sure they host LAN parties there and stuff like that. But and they always have them in the biggest cities in the world. They're definitely using it as a promotion piece. Like I said, Sony. I loved going to the Sony store when it was down in Chicago, because you would see the stuff just as it came out. That was back when Sony was making bleeding edge tech. I don't know that Razer is. I also don't know that in the modern era where you see everything online from creators like me, that anybody cares about that. Now, some of the stuff I will say, mice, keyboards, if you can, mice, try them in person. Try them sitting at a desk if possible, because it's definitely a different thing to have you standing and having it at a desk height. Your wrist is at a much different angle than if you're sitting and at a desk height, because your wrist should be flat then. Mice, I think you can feel up pretty fast. A keyboard, whew. That's a 2-week thing. And to be truthful, a mouse kind of is that sort of thing too. It took me, like I said, about 2 weeks to adapt from being squishing with the back, the thick part of my thumb, to doing it the front third-ish, past the halfway point though. It took me probably more than 2 weeks. I'm not playing every day, right? But to adapt to just to shift that weight around a little bit, right? And that did help with other smaller mice doing it, because with some of those I have to do the tip of it to not hit the side buttons with how fat my thumb is. But keyboards, Gotta be your layout. How do you find out what layout you want? Use it. At least a week, ideally 2 weeks. Switches, see, here's the thing with switches. Back in the day, you used to just resolder, or there'd be like certain boards that came with certain switches, so you try them, but then the switch is tied to the board often. Now you can try your same board, but then you'd have to already know that board and do the hotspot with the switches. I can, because I know what switches I like now, or the style of switches I like. It's pretty easy for me to tell if I'm gonna be fine with it or not. There's kind of like also with a switch, there's like don't like, I can use it, and oh, this is great. And that's all dependent on the person, right? Like I still think blacks are a great starter switch. A lot of you are gonna be like, "Brr, brr, 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 brr." Lighter doesn't mean faster, people. In fact, a lot of Vaxi went up on the click weight on the recent mice. Yeah, lighter literally does not mean faster. Shorter travel does, though. They make those speed switches, which are even lighter and even, like, they're literally, you move the switch less far. But more than anything, like, switch kind very, like, you know, linear, tactile, clicky, that'll get you in the ballpark. The layout, I think, is key on a keyboard. You know, your 75% or like a 60%. Actually, I prefer a happy hacking keyboard style 60%. That means no like outer controls. And if I type on one that does have them, I'll hit them and I'll have to disable them and maybe even remove the keycaps. I've done it before. Just because of how I'm used to rolling my hand on a happy hacking keyboard. I would hit the controls on the sides. And after that, what I've been finding more and more and more lately is keycap profile, and Keychron's starting to change. They use this weird spherical profile for a lot of their boards for the longest time. I think the K2 Pro V2 or K2 Max V2 or something. I noticed they finally weren't using the weird spherical keycaps. I would argue that some of your guys is like, yeah, you might get like, oh yeah, they're double shot PVT and blah blah, but they're like wonk. They're like SA style spherical keycaps. Like, I'm sorry, but nobody's typing great on those. I don't think. Maybe some people out there are, okay, but like the bulk of the people are not doing that. Or you know, like a DSA style is fully flat profile keycap. Maybe, but I am. You know, like you gotta be. Do you run a flat keyboard? Maybe you'd like it then. I like what is it? The standard happy hacking keyboard, which is like a 6% with you know, like the standard angle of keys, right? That's what I like. That's gonna hit me before the Switch. I'm gonna tell you right now. Like I can, both of my Q60s, which are MX compatible, or actually MX variants of happy hacking keyboards effectively. One uses browns and one uses reds. And what do I like? Urco clears. Neither of those are that, but because the rest of the keyboard is to my liking, I can deal with the Switch. Yes, they're hot swap. I really should do that at some point. That's money. And you're like, you just bought a mouse that could have paid for those switches. Yeah, the mouse is more interesting and important to me. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Comments, questions, throw them down below. My thing is, if you like the V3 Pro, you'll like the V4 Pro. I don't like the texture of it as much. It's more rubberized than a Viper V3 Pro, but less rubberized than a V3 Hyperspeed Deathadder. I would personally still say get the white one, because the black one gets all, like, you can see everything. You can see from the thumb there too. That's where my grease comes from. Dry, greasy hands. Lovely. We'll have to get this one going. It feels so nimble and lightweight. Like, it's kind of stupid. Like, it makes the original XE wireless feel like a friggin' truck, like an 18-wheeler. Like, brrrr. And after using the Basilisk the past 3-4 days, this thing feels like just there's nothing there. And they might be at a crossroads again where like they're like, what can we really improve? Personally, I still think the shape's a step back from the older V2 Deathadder. I preferred that shape. They changed like where the hump is, and the whole shape, like completely different. They called it a Deathadder. More of a Mamba. But what spawned out of this Deathadder was this Viper. And for my playstyle, if you're going within the Razer range of products, this is what I would go with, personally. But if you're more of a right hand ergo kind of person, definitely a good mouse. If you've picked this up in person, this is not too big for me, by any means. If anything, my right finger hangs off a little bit. I do still think the hyperspeed feels closer to a V2 or an EC2. So this may still be the go-to for some of you, rather than like this guy. I noticed another trend just now too. Charge indicator right there on the front of that, in front of the scroll wheel, right underneath the USB-C, or right above the USB-C. It is like that on here as well. It is like that on there. What has Vaxi done as well? This is now their second mouse they've done it. They've done it in the same. I mean, it makes sense. It's right by the charge port, and you can see it because it's on the front of the mouse. Where they always used to put it on the bottom, which to me made, not just Vaxi, but a lot of brands would put the charge indicator on the bottom of the mouse, and I'm like, what? What is kind of funny though is you used to not need that, because like on the Basilisk, when I throw this on its charging puck pad, the RGB just turns into the charging indicator. Well, obviously, once you eliminate the RGB, you gotta add an LED back for that, right? Just you know, that's something to keep in mind. Is if maybe the V3 Pro, now V Pro isn't for you, the Hyperspeed V3 might be it for you. I dislike the coating even more. Like, this is one where if I decided that this was my shape, I would potentially sand that down, like get out the sandpaper and effectively refinish it. I don't care enough to do that. Yeah, I'm not. And I've done that. Like I've done it to, you know, Rival 106s, or there's certain shapes where it's like, this is my mouse for the moment. But like there's, I could make it better, like in ways, you know, like where some people put grips on it. I could see putting grips on the clicks, not in this one. It's plenty big and filled in. But like I said, I've done that before plenty of times. Especially like right in the click. Like I just need it like right where my pad hits, like right there. But the side grips I never understood, because you're making it fatter. Unless you need that, but then I would just look at a fatter mouse. There's so many mice on the market today. I really don't think, like, unless you're getting into some of these niche brands or these super cheap brands, like you don't have to be like, oh, that mouse is the only one of two on the market that performs the way I want. I have to modify it to fit my hand shape or hand grip to blah. No, just get a different mouse. Like, I've got the they made them for Fnatic. I'm forgetting the Thorn and Maya. I forget the brand that makes those off the top of my head. That seems to be that's a nice mouse. I'm gonna let you know, it's a nice mouse. Granted, the entire bottom is gutted. And they give you like a sticker to put over it in case they're like, oh yeah, in case you didn't want like your cat to go in there. I just blow it up with, you know, reverse vacuum. But that's a great mouse. Very inconsistent with the software. Like Maya X has stuff, but only the like certain versions and stuff. Whereas that's where I can come to appreciate Vaxi, who basically, if they can backport the feature that they just developed,
they will. And I gotta give them props for that. Like, actually, when the XEV2 pre-orders sold out, there people were it was either that or the NP01S V2s. They were like, just so you guys are aware, we did release firmware updates, and like, unless you have a reason to get the physical new hardware, the performance of the sensor between the two models, or in some cases it was the same sensor still, and you can just update the firmware and get the new features. Like, you don't feel like you have to get the new mouse. That's why they develop the firmware the way they do for these, is because they want you to use and continue to use the mouse. Now, I got the V2 because there were some nice improvements that I saw on other, like the E1 NP01S V2, that I wanted, and this was my main mouse, and it was time for a refresh. And because this is my main mouse, I could appreciate an update. But like I said, I use the wired one at work all the time. So same thing here. If you're on the lookout for a new mouse, potentially go here. Don't feel like if you have a V3 you have to go to the V4. If you have a V2, definitely don't feel like it. You're gonna want to try the Viper, try the Hyperspeed, because this is not a direct upgrade from the V2 or the original, like Elite, Chroma, Essential, etc. If you like those, probably get the Hyperspeed before this, or maybe even look at like an EC2, or look at to be truthful, I wouldn't even look at an EC2 anymore. The Vaxi E1 is a better version of the E2 or EC2, sorry. But yeah, don't think if you have the older versions, like say you still have a Deathadder V2, which I think it's like, I do have a Deathadder V2 Ultimate with the charge dock. That's still probably like that, and if we go back to the wired ones, the Deathadder Chroma Overwatch Edition, Bellissimo. Oh, that mouse feels amazing. So, as I said before, please subscribe, hit that like button. This one went on for a while. There isn't much for me to show you. It's a V3 Pro with their updated finish, which I think is worse. But a lot of you out there, it does get a little grody. But I quite liked this. I really liked back when Logitech had this super textured coating as well. And then that was with the like 400S, 500S, or they should 400 and 500. And then they went to the S and they made it like a hydrophobic on top of that. Even better. Then that went away. I'm sure we were getting like cancer from it or something. Those were the days, though. Another thing that I don't like about the grips, Squares has them on a lot of his mice, and I have them on my Rival V3 for work, because I put on the like they don't make grips for the Rival. Yeah, they make them for the Aerox. But it's the same mouse. The reason why I make them for the Aerox is because it's got holes in it. So I put my Aerox set on my Rival. But then that also, here's the weird thing about that. They only give you side grips and click grips, not a top grip here. Well, if you're going to make it fatter and taller in the front, I need it to be taller here, right? So I ended up having to use the stick-on Hex Razer grips, which are the same thickness. Actually felt great. Looking at grips now, though, after using that, now like I've been using the wired XE for quite a while at work, but when I need a mouse wirelessly at work, or up until I brought that one to work, because I was like, I don't need a wireless mouse at work. Like when I'm at my desk, now I have a desk. Like I don't need to always take it with me because I can just stay there. But up until then, I was using that, and I had put the grips on. I had to swap the switches out at one point. Because that was more, they didn't die from regular use. I dropped it, landed right on one of the main clicks, and just bashed it in. So I resoldered it, and it was good to go. Yeah, those grips, and I'm sure where's the picture on here that says, yeah, this only has side grips and click grips, Now, if it were me, if you're putting grips here and grips here and grips here, and because this is a palm mouse, your palm, because this, my palm, palms this mouse perfectly, right? If you're increasing the sides and the front top of this mouse, you're also going to need to increase this radius, because you need to increase the whole thing, in my opinion. You'll probably want to buy some of the Razer, and maybe you don't need to do the whole thing. You can probably put them sparingly, like where your knuckles land, like here, you know. You'll have to figure out where that is, but they make like little hex stick-on ones. Because if you, like I said, if you're increasing the width here, if this fits your hand currently and you're putting grips on it, if you only increase the width, now it's going to feel wider, but your hand's going to have to dip in. Now if you increase the front, now your fingers are going up like that, right? Well, you need your back of your hand to go up too. Otherwise, the ergonomics of this, if they're already good for you, are going to get completely thrown off. Otherwise, my opinion would be the only reason to put the grips on would be because the mouse isn't ergonomically correct for you. My answer to that is, how many other mice are out there? You know, I would just look for a different mouse at that point, rather than forcing one to fit me. Now, if you really like this one, you're like, oh, just a little bit here, a little bit there, or finish it off. But if you're going full grip with this, you need to add something here. From my experience, had the same thing happened on the Rival 3 using the Aerox grips. They only did the click grips and the side grips, leaving us palm users that actually put our palm on the frickin' mouse unsupported. You know, like all of this wasn't touching, and we had to float. And it's like, oh, it's so much fatter and taller in the front, but like I got nothing to rest my hand on. Yep, something to keep in mind. Whereas when I do enough, just enough for my click pad, sort of, have a little bit, that just lifts this front part of my finger up just a hair, and that I don't need to mess with anything else on there, because it's just basically from this joint forward is what's hitting a grip, and that, for at least me, does not mess with the ergonomics. So hopefully all this was informational. I know you're like, oh, you didn't show off the mouse till halfway through and blah, blah, blah. You didn't show much off about the mouse. Go and watch the video on the Deathadder V3 Pro. It's the same mouse. It's lighter. The buttons are separated. The clicks are noisy as all get out. If you're a League player, you'll love that. You'll just, your roommates and or significant other and or parent and or parents and or probably even kids might even be annoyed by that if they're teenagers. God, this thing looks like it should be like a knob or a... I want to see how much the mouse is versus the dongle. Weight-wise. Because this is kind of... Alright. Come on, turn on. Alright, we got 0. 2 ounces for the mouse. 1.6 ounces for the dongle. Ain't that a kicker when your dongle is almost as heavy as your mouse? Impressive, in a way. Yeah, possibly questionable in another way. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and you'll check out future videos. We should have... trying to think which other mice might be showing up. I don't know if any other ones will show up anytime soon. I wasn't planning on... I knew when the V4 came out and it was announced I was going to pick it up. It actually looked significantly more different with the renders that Razer had on their website. Like, it looked like the clicks might have been at slightly different lengths, or depths, I should say. Like, they changed... No. Way less it's changed than what I thought. I think there's a new Vaxi mouse being tested, so that's probably the next one you'll see. Otherwise, go back and check out the Phantom Green of the Basilisk Pro 35K here with its translucent green grips, and we have the M75 wireless. That's not the Air, that's just the standard one, Mac Edition. Competitive wise, you'll want to check out this video on what I think is best mouse on the market right now, at least for me, and that is the XEV2. I got in the lake green, so got it personalized as well. I have a, just for reference, because people always ask, I have a, what I can consider a fingertip palm hybrid. Like it's a palm grip, but or a rear palm grip. So what that means is I would consider a palm grip somebody who straight up just plumps their hand like there. That's a palm grip. Look at that. Like your hand's way off there. That's how Squeers plays often. I'm more of a palm grip coming in from the back. Depending on the size of the mouse, I'll leave a little gap and I'll get a little fingertippy. And I can move in and out like that, right, to do some very fine movements. But otherwise, I'm a palm grip, like a rear palm grip, not a top palm grip. What was it? 20.5 centimeters, I want to say. $8 inches. You know, whatever that is. I think it's 20.5 centimeters. So, not a larger hand, larger than average hand. But I know people with meat paws. You know the people I'm talking about, the mechanics, the plumbers, I don't have that kind of hand, but it's let's just say it's also not a hand nimble enough for piano. Horrible at that. There's a reason why I play drums. So hope you guys enjoyed the video, and for now, check out some of the previous ones. Hopefully you enjoy the video content, and you know, hit that subscribe button so you can see any future mice videos. We have a ton of them going back. It's lessened a bit since I haven't been working in a place where I can get a discount on them, but I do pick up the ones that matter for me. And my NP01S is in there. We got the E1 you saw earlier. You know, that'd probably be my choice, direct choice over that. Otherwise, there's the Thorn. That's a really nice choice. So, yeah, let me know down below. The biggest thing, too, is if you can either get friends that have these and ask them, like, hey, you want to try my mouse? Let's swap for a week or two, or a week or something. Or go to a Micro Center. They got them all displayed. Even Best Buy will have a decent lineup on there where you might have, like, if you're just using, like, whatever your parent got you or whatever somebody got you as a present, there's a good chance there's a better fit out there for you. You know, and otherwise, if you find you like a certain shape style, you know, like say you find the Deathadder, try an EC2, try an E1, try a Thorn. Maybe go back a bit further if you don't mind trying some wired mice. There's some other designs there, and find yourself the shape that like you really like. And sometimes, like, I would love an IntelliMouse optical that's actually viable, but as much as they made, Ninjitsuo made the Katana, what is it, Ultralight or something, not well executed. Not well enough to use on a regular basis, at least. Rival 106 is the closest that went, but pretty much everything now is wireless, and that is low tech and unavailable nowadays, sadly. So hopefully we'll see in future videos. Peace.